Welcome back to a special episode of Beyond Coaching. Got Dustin here with me, the co-founder of the Impactful Coaching Project. And Dustin, we've been doing a thing over the last year.
We've been doing a thing. We wrote a book, and I think coming off your doctorate and just, I don't know, would we say years of conversation of looking back, both young coaches, not much experience, to our roles now. And you were the leader of it, but said, why don't we put this on paper?
I think you undersold our age. We're both north of 40 now. So I think it's almost 15 years of conversation and learning together. And yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Do you ever see yourself as an author? I mean, it seems like a natural fit with your personality.
Well, thanks for that. I always said I was going to write a children's book. So this is far more advanced. I think, full transparency, I think maybe our gift sets align there in that you're organized and I've often said sometimes I can be the kite and you can be the grounded one. So I think the other part of writing the book is flushing out many of these things. And so I think it's made me a better coach. I hope and think it's made you a better leader as an athletic director. And would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think just personality wise, I've always found it helpful to get things on paper and refine ideas there. And I think that's really where it started. Then it felt kind of weird of, oh, should we turn it into a book? But when we started the Impactful Coaching Project, it just made some sense. And I think about it, I think we tried to write it in a way that it's the book we wish we had when we started coaching. And especially when we became head coaches. Would you agree with that?
Well said. The book that we wish we had when we became coaches. Yeah, and I think the feedback that we've received already from sharing and speaking and helping lead leaders and coach coaches, the thing that I've appreciated the most, and I think this comes through in the book, is that we're here to share, not speak at you or to you, but to share with you and share some things we wished we would have had. And I think the other exciting thing is this is a continued dialogue. Mm-hmm. This isn't the only way. But when you start talking about things like toughness and the 3 C's and transactional versus transformational, and man, I think for every coach, at the very least, it's a really good reminder.
Yeah. So it kind of has 2 parts, really. We have the leadership, the really describing Generation Z, which is the current group of kids we're coaching. And then we get into the 3 C's, which is our frame on how to think about leadership and coaching. So why don't you briefly, and I can jump into talk about those 3 C's.
Well, competence.
But not enough that people don't have to talk.
Well, okay, I'll start with care, competence, and being constant. And yeah, without this being a 4-hour podcast, I would say the thing that I love about those 3 that we've talked about is giving direct application. Yeah. And so I'll give one tiny sneak peek, if you will. When we talk about care, creating platforms of care, it sounds elementary. Yeah. When I look back, even right now as a coach, 20 years in, or definitely when I look back to my first years of coaching, I did not strategically or think about how am I going to create systems of care. Yeah. And again, that word may sound elementary, or what does that mean? And then when you're doing it, it's like, man, this is effective. This is powerful.
So system is just things we can do kind of day after day, week after week, month after month, where I want to say it becomes predictable, but we know how we're going to create an environment or culture that we care about kids and kids feel belong. And then that goes into the definition of toughness and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I say this of kind of how I've described 3D coaching to people of even if you hate kids, you don't care about kids if you want to win. I also think this is the route to go. Every sport is different in the application. Like you're coaching golf right now. I think in some ways, the stuff you take away from our book as a golf coach might be different than what you apply as a basketball coach or a football coach. Is that fair?
Yeah. And I think, that's where the fun part is, right? How do we take these underlying principles or foundations that I think we can agree upon and then make them our own and make them dynamic to our our sport. I just want to throw this out. I love that you said toughness. What a buzzword that is. And again, how we define that for me, it reminds me or gives me the freedom to really coach my guys hard. But there's some underlying things that have to happen first for them to, as we say, meet you 50-50 or maybe even more.
Maybe even more. That's it.
When we talk about the second C, competence, that line that we can continue to say, if you're not competent, there's a chance you're lazy.
Yeah.
There's a chance you're fearful.
We'll get into more on the next podcast episode.
Yeah. What's your thoughts when you think about competence, your takeaway? Because that's one that I would say you and I, as young coaches, I think any young coach, but also sometimes on the back end of your coaching career can be really tough.
Well, I think two things. So I started coaching in 2007. And I mean, we're 5 years into email at that time. And you had to work to find resources, and I remember when I found stuff online, I dive into it just because there wasn't that just unbelievable amount of information out there. I think the challenge now is what's the good information and who do you learn from? How do you do it? And something else we say in the book is if you're not competent, you may lack wisdom of what is the good information. So, I think that's a big piece of it, how the world's changed. And the duty of leaders is kind of like, how do we connect people to the right information and not just the best marketer? And the other piece you talk about, we dive into the book, is there's kind of this curve of learning we found at both of our careers where really the front end of the career and the back end of the career, you may think but you actually know less. And front end of the career, we're all just young and idealistic and think we got it all. And as we go through the career, the curve goes up, so to speak, of knowing more. But there's this risk on the back end of set in your ways, and everything's evolving and changing, and we just need to be competent of developing our skills and our knowledge. Because if you don't know what you're talking about in your sport, you're going to lose people and you're not helpful as a coach.
Yeah, with this generation more than ever.
Yeah.
And I think the big question that continued to come up on competence is, what do I not know that I don't know?
Yeah.
And again, 20 years ago, that I was pretty sure I knew it all. Now, 20 years later, it's a question of being curious and learning and integrating. I mean, you said a lot there with competence of, if you don't know what you're talking about, more than ever, this generation is gonna know that, gonna sniff it out. And so, then we get to the last C, which is
constant.
Yeah, being constant. And I love this because I think one of the big things in being constant is the messaging that you give your team, the stories you tell, and consistently doing that. And that's hard. It can be easier when things are going your way. Man, it's difficult when they're not.
And being prepared for, to steal the words of Brett Ledbetter, but the moments that catch you off guard. Do you still respond? And we thought about consistent for the term, but just thought constant sounded cooler. But how do we consistently respond to this constant presence of people can count on us, and have predictable responses and helpful responses to lead people.
And when you say predictable responses to help lead people, from the player standpoint, what I think the words you gain are trust and authority. Mm-hmm. And again, regardless of the generation, but especially this generation, those are important things. Now, the thing that I'm excited about the book is we can say that in theory, but then how do you do that? So the suggestions that we give, I think are really helpful. And I'm excited to hear feedback from coaches and other leaders when they read it, to say, this really stuck out to me, or, that may have worked for you. I went this route, and just continuing to learn along with others. Because you never fully have this thing down.
Yeah. And that's where I think we hope the book's a little different. For most books I've read, we've tried to make it short. So I think it's 120 pages, but it's a lot of, here's specific things. Like here's how you can put it into action.
Yeah.
And it's all stuff we've done and tried. Some failed, some didn't. But I think there's space there if a coach can read it and then go out to practice the next day and say, you know what, I'm going to try this for a while and experiment with it.
Yeah. If I asked you the question, I'm a coach. I've got recruiting. I've got budget. Obviously, I've got I got to get us ready to compete. Why do what's the value in me taking whatever amount of time it would take for me to get through these 120 pages away from the other things? How would you unashamedly say that?
Well, I think it goes down to two things. One, I think a passion both of you and I have had for a long time is we love sport. We hate the culture that surrounds it at times. So this is a way to work at that, to make it a healthy environment. But I think the other piece is, I think winning and enjoying what you're doing can go hand in hand. I think there are oftentimes coaches are miserable when they're winning, and that everything is just adversarial and hard. And there are just some strategies in here to build healthy team environments, healthy team cultures where people are going to get better while supporting each other.
Yeah.
How would you answer? Any different?
No, the only thing I would add to it is I think an awareness that we've got to how do we lead effectively with this generation, and doesn't mean you have to sell your soul. Doesn't mean there can't be non-negotiables. And I think for me, again, that's kind of a relief, if you will, if you're maybe a coach that has done this for a while, to say, no, you can still have non-negotiables. You can still coach hard. And here's some helpful ways to meet the athletes that you're coaching in a way that, as you're saying, can maximize relationships and production on the court or field, and have a good time doing it. So it was a resource for me as I continued to read through it.
Yeah, and I think the last piece when we wrap up we didn't mention is there's a chapter on conflict resolution as well, which as a coach, as a leader, you live in that. And I wasn't trained on it. So part of that, we talk about our lessons and stuff we've learned, but we also went to who's one of my good friends and the best I've seen on conflict resolution and having hard conversations, and Ryan Thompson, kind of talk about his framework on how he goes about it. So I think that's another piece that, again, stuff I don't see coaches trained on quite a bit that is so pertinent to their day-to-day work.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
How can we do conflict resolution and, again, the end result be fruitful? How can we do conflict resolution and not lose our jobs?
Yeah.
I mean, as crass as that sounds, I think about some of those. I think about coaches in those situations where they haven't been trained or haven't practiced. And yes, I said practice conflict resolution, and what a great tool for it. So super excited and hoping that this can be a great resource for other leaders.
Yeah. So the book is available on pretty much every online platform: Amazon, Apple Books, Barnes and Nobles, Google. So you can search it all and find it there. Go to our Substack and find a link to it as well. But we hope you'll buy it, enjoy it, and then share your ideas. We don't know if we'll publish multiple iterations of it, but I think we're right in there that we know this won't be the same in 5 years. So we hope it keeps evolving. Hopefully get some conversation partners in it.
Yeah, I agree. Great stuff.
And we'll wrap up there. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Beyond Coaching. Beyond Coaching is a podcast developed and produced by the Impactful Coaching Project with the support of Friends University. The Impactful Coaching Project seeks to develop coaches that coach the whole person and is the thought leader in coaching the 21st century athlete. The Impactful Coaching Project produces training, information, and research to help coaches improve. To see more information, go to impactfulcoachingproject.substack.com. Thank you.